Highest monthly close ever in terms of price. We're in the midst of talking about Taproot and things like that. It is going to be a fantastic day for you today. Talking about all this and being together. I know it's a little bit difficult with quarantine and everything. Hopefully, this can be sort of a light in the darkness of your house or wherever you happen to be. With me today is my co-host Alex Gladstein. Alex, it's been 3 years since the user-activated soft fork. It's been a year since we wrote our book, the Little Bitcoin book. How's everything going?
Yeah, well, it's an honor to be with you all today. Bitcoin Independence Day is a great holiday for human rights, and it does help connect human rights and freedom with Bitcoin. This day where we're honoring the activities of the community in pushing back against government and corporate interference against the network is really why I'm in this thing. To have this money network, this parallel financial system that's beyond the control of entities and oligarchs is really what has inspired me to spend the last few years working in this space. And I think it's good to reflect on that as we see the world around us. I don't know if crumbling is the right word, but being in this weird upside down zone where you have authoritarianism on the rise in so many places, where you have people being angry even at their democratically elected rulers for bad decision making, and where people are starting to realize, I think, that they could sort of vote or opt out by just choosing to use Bitcoin, right? And it's just a different way of peacefully protesting what's going on out there. I'm a big believer in traditional protest. I think it's still very important. Maybe some Bitcoiners disagree with me, but I think you can achieve a lot through political activism, actually, through peaceful protest, through movement building. But sometimes it just doesn't work, right? I mean, there's only so much you can do. And against I would say the enemy, the final boss of the legacy financial system, I don't think it's going to work. Like I applaud people who want the U.S. government and, let's say, other governments like the EU super government or whatever to have a private central bank digital currency. Like I hope they win. I hope they convince these bureaucrats to give us private money. I just don't think it's going to happen. Like I'm not very bullish on that. And that's why Bitcoin's really important, right? So as we enter this world where all our money is going to be digital, we got to have some that's sovereign and private, and that's why we're here. And I'm so happy to be spending this day with you all.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful reminder of why Bitcoin exists. I've been telling people, this period of time when we're all locked down and having to stay at home, and some people are not working, and they've been laid off and things like that. How depressing would this time be without Bitcoin? Because that's like the one beacon of hope in this very dark time. And yeah,
and it allows us to continue to collaborate and make impact even while we're stuck at home. We're going to have some exciting news, at least from the Human Rights Foundation this coming week. We're announcing more grants from our Bitcoin Development Fund, more awesome people who are making money more private for the rest of us. And at HRF, we continue to do research in terms of what are Bitcoiners doing around the world, and we're going to get to talk to a lot of them today, which is really exciting. And Jimmy and I have been talking to some of our co-authors of the Little Bitcoin book over this past week, and just getting a refresher on, again, why we're so fired up about this space. I mean, we did a deep dive with Luis Buenaventura from the Philippines. You'll hear from him later. But it's just fascinating to see how Bitcoin is basically a hack for the international remittance system, and it is a way for people to get money from one place to another across these like crazy walls and borders. It's just like a wall buster, and that was really interesting to hear. We're going to talk to our friend Timi from Nigeria, who's got an amazing new app that they've created out of Bitcoins out of Lagos called Send Cash that I really encourage you all to check out. It's kind of like a reverse Strike, the thing that Jack Mallers is doing, in as much as you can send Bitcoin from any open source wallet in the world, or any wallet, and you can have it settle through their app within 30 minutes to any Nigerian bank account. And the way that they've done that on the back end is really neat, but it's a super cool product, and we'll talk to Timi about that today. We were talking to Alex Lloyd, who we'll have on here, about Bitcoin's sort of like, rise in the eyes of the traditional investors. We're going to talk to Lily Liu shortly about what's happening in China and Hong Kong and Bitcoin's role there. We're going to talk to Alejandro Machado about Bitcoin's record-breaking volumes in Latin America. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and speaking of the book, here is the book, the Little Bitcoin book. We wrote it about a year ago, and I have to say that was probably one of the most rewarding weeks of my life in terms of like collaboration and things. How has this book impacted people as far as you can tell, Alex?
Yeah, so the reason I was inspired to want to do the book, because we were all hanging out at the Oslo Freedom Forum a couple of years ago, right? And I just thought it would be neat to try to put something together with a bunch of different perspectives. I mean, you can write a book, I can write a book. It's great, we should, and you've done so, and I'll do so, etc. But to try and do a project with 8 different perspectives from all around the world, from 5 different continents, and from 8 different professions and backgrounds, I thought would be neat, because I thought it would help distill why Bitcoin really matters the most, right? All of us have different, perspectives, and we had a lot of disagreements in writing the book about different topics, ranging from, will Bitcoin stop wars? I think was a fun one to debate. Will it end belligerence? And reflecting on the dollar hegemony that we live in, and whether or not that's a good or a bad thing was fun. It was a fun group exercise to do. But ultimately, we agreed on enough to have 120 pages or so of content, and just that experience is worth reflecting on for a couple minutes, because it may inspire future projects from you all listening. Basically, I mean, Jimmy, has been well versed in the area of sort of design sprints for coding, right? And a lot of you may be familiar with that. And I remember he got on the phone with me and Alex Lloyd early in the process and said, well, instead of collaborating on a traditional book, why don't we actually just live together for 4 or 5 days and do a book sprint? And we hadn't really heard of that before. We thought it was a neat idea, and we managed to convince 8 people to do it, and we all flew in to a particular location and lived together in this awesome house for 4 or 5 days. And it was I'd love to do it again. It was really great. I mean, Jimmy, what did you think of the first 24 hours of that experience?
That was really interesting. I obviously I hadn't really done it in that sort of environment, but I had done it in sort of a startup sprinty environment where you're like coding an application or coding something else, and it turns out that writing a book is not that different than writing an app. So that part was a little bit surprising to me. The other part that was surprising to me was just how fast you can go when you have a lot of people that are motivated and sort of doing the work together.
We made actual use of Post-it notes. And I was a little skeptical, but we're sitting in this room, all 8 of us, and we literally put up on giant, you can get the giant Post-it notes that are like 3 feet wide. So we each had our own giant Post-it notes, and then we're putting together all the thoughts of Bitcoin that we think are important. And then we're just like organizing them. And hey, I mean, it's probably something they teach in business school, but it actually worked. And by the end of that first full day, we had our table of contents, and we were basically assigning people, you write this chapter, you write this chapter. And on the next day, we had a deadline of around 2 p.m. and you had to do 4,000 words. So 6 of us were like authoring chapters. Meanwhile, we had Luis, who was already designing the book out, and we were really clicking together. And then the next few days was just nonstop editing. The nice thing is,
I mean, we did, to be fair, we did take breaks to eat and enjoy the swimming pool, the hot tub, and
the basketball court,
and like theater. There's a workout area. Like I don't know.
It was sweet. You got to have
a
good
environment. How did we find that
environment.
house anyway? I guess we could ask Alex.
One of Alex's friends was kind enough to let us rent it out. But no, it was, and it's, you can write a few thousand words, but it's great to have 7 other people edit it in succession. It really makes it much better. So I think the book holds up. Why don't we talk a little bit about the different languages that it's in these days?
Yeah, these are the ones that have been published so far. We obviously have English here, and we have Spanish, El Pequeño Libro de Bitcoin, and we have the Portuguese, O Pequeño Livro do Bitcoin, which sounds suspiciously like the Spanish. But yeah, these are the 3 languages that we have published, but we also have a lot that are coming up. Alex, do you want to give the rundown of those?
I'm just looking at our website just as a refresher. Not only do we have paperbacks available in those 3 languages, we also have a wonderful Audible audiobook in English that Guy Swan did for us, which is terrific. I highly recommend you check out. We also have a community-created Mandarin Chinese translation, which is available online. So we do have the book in 4 languages complete now out. We have an exciting update. We're going to be releasing it in Arabic next month through some partners of friends of mine called Ideas Beyond Borders. So they work to translate the works of books by like Bill Gates and Steven Pinker into Arabic and get them in the hands of like classic liberals in that part of the world. So our book's going through their process, which is a lot of fun. And we're also nearing completion on Russian, Czech, Turkish, Korean, Vietnamese, German, Hindi, and French. So that's really going to cover quite a lot. And we just added Punjabi as well as a book that as a language that's happening. So by the end of this year, you're going to have the choice to read the book in 12 different languages, which are pretty pumped about.
Yeah, and how many of those are in languages in distressed places that really need Bitcoin? What would you estimate?
Well, look, if you look at the Human Rights Foundation's data, about 4.3 billion people live in dictatorships and authoritarian regimes around the world. And, that's about 95 countries. But if you actually look at the languages that we went through, I would say more than 2/3 of those people living under those oppressive regimes will be able to read this in their native language. Jimmy and I are already, talking about sending it into North Korea, which I think is a really neat idea. And look, one of the reasons why the book works well, I think, is that it takes a very even hand with regard to the United States. Like a lot of people around the world, especially who live under dictatorships, they don't have a fond idea of the United States because the US has supported their dictatorship in the past, right? Or like, they're seen internally with domestic propaganda as like the bad guy. And you know what? They live behind an information firewall and they can't sort of get a full picture of what's going on. So because our book takes an even hand to that and basically talks about the evils of the dollar hegemony as well, I think it works. But it's time to get into some of our guests here.
Our first guest is Timi. Alex, could you give us a rundown of what Timi does and who he is?
Yeah, so Timi is a Nigerian entrepreneur who he and his colleagues went through Y Combinator and ended up creating a company called Bitcoins, which is now one of the most popular exchanges in Nigeria. Again, this is a country that's massive, the largest country in Africa, 200 million people. There will be more Nigerians than Americans by 2050. So this is one of the most important countries in the world. Obviously in oil power, but tremendously corrupt. There's a lot of room poking through though now for like people trying to make a creative difference. And Timi and his team are doing record-breaking volume. They also have created this Send Cash app that I talked to you about earlier. So it's going to be a lot of fun to talk to him about what's happening in Lagos.
Yeah, it looks like Timi is still connecting over audio, but as soon as he joins, we will have him on. But yeah, Africa is certainly an interesting region for Bitcoin, and I look forward to talking about it. From a human rights perspective, what would you say about Nigeria, Alex?
Yeah, so HRF usually classifies governments in 3, either as a fully democratic government like Switzerland, a fully authoritarian like China, or something in the middle, which we call a competitive authoritarian state. And that's what Nigeria is. Because look, there are elections, there are independent civil society groups, but there's a very entrenched elite that's very difficult to unseat. And they make it, the elections aren't exactly free and fair. Let's put it that way. Not all the time. The other thing, about Nigeria is that there's tremendous opportunities for entrepreneurial growth. that can disrupt society, maybe even more so than human rights activism. So that's what Timi's doing.
All right. I guess Timi, if you can unmute and and show your video. We had to switch things around a little bit. So there he is, Timi. How's everything going, man?
It's going okay. As good as can be given the situation of the world, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, like what's the situation on the ground over there with COVID and lockdowns and things like that, and in Nigeria, Lagos, I think, is where you are currently. I think we might have lost him for sure. Oh, yeah, this is unfortunate, but yeah, I think there's we can go back to Timi.
There he is.
Okay, yeah, you're back. I think we're having some connection issues, but can you tell us what the situation on the ground in Lagos is like? I don't know if he can hear us. Oh no, his video's gone. Timi, can you?
Are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
We can see you. What's up, man?
Okay, cool. I'm alright. Yeah. Sometimes the internet here is also weird.
Yeah. So what's the situation on the ground there with respect to COVID and lockdowns and things like that?
Yeah, we had a couple of lockdowns, I guess. I'm not sure about the logic behind how some of them were implemented. But you know, the government had to do something. We're severely under testing, so there's that. And right now there's a 10 p.m. curfew. So yeah.
So you haven't been out late recently?
No, and that is very, very unlike me. Very, very unlike me.
And what's happening politically in Nigeria lately? Is there a lot of instability, or you know, how are people reacting to the lockdowns?
So I guess initially when like movement was completely banned, there was some, you could tell that there was like increasing people getting antsy, and people who couldn't afford to do that, because some people make money daily in Nigeria, lots of people are poor, and you could sense that there was like almost some resentment building up, but that has kind of dissipated. But generally, you know, it's the same old instability and chaos, just the normal kind, except it ends at 10. Yeah.
And what's Bitcoin situation in Nigeria today?
It's every time I feel like I understand the scale at which people in Nigeria, and I guess the rest of Africa, use.
Okay, I think we've lost Timi again, but he was saying something about you know, I'm guessing remittances.
The scale of Bitcoin Nigeria. I'm sure he'll be back in a second.
This is it does seem like there's a lot of internet activity or something like that going on in Nigeria.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, there. All right, so maybe you can keep that video off so we have a little more bandwidth. But could you say that again, because you were cut off for a little bit?
Yeah, I'm just saying every time I feel like. This what being an Ethereum developer must feel like. I have a good sense of smaller I'm thinking. Did you guys, because everything seems fine on my end. I don't know if you guys heard me.
we didn't. You kept getting cut off. But what's the Bitcoin situation on the ground? Could you explain again? I'm sorry. Yeah. Again, the internet not be working. Every time I'm done answering the question, it's fine again. So yeah. your uplink is probably worse than your downlink, something like that. I think, could you just very briefly summarize what you said again, because I think our listeners want to know what's going on in Lagos. Hmm. All right, so I think I think we're having some technical difficulty with Timi. We will let's move on to Lily. We might bring on Timi again if we need to until his internet connection is better.
Yeah, but check out Send Cash Africa. It's very cool.
Yeah,
what Timi's doing is
his
great.
other company is Bitcoins, is it?
Yes, his exchange.
Yeah. All right, so Alex, if you, our next guest is Lily. Can you tell us a little bit more about her?
Yeah, absolutely. Lily has a background in doing a lot of business education, both in the United States and China. She's been involved in the technology world, in the health world. She was involved with, of course, Earn.com, which was acquired by Coinbase, and has been a friend in the Bitcoin space for a while. So it was really exciting for us to be able to collaborate with her on the Little Bitcoin book.
Yeah, Lily, if you can unmute and, oh, there you are. Okay, so.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Lily.
So
what's up?
What's with all the gowns in the background or something? What are you doing over
Why
there?
Why does it look so messy back there?
Yeah.
We started a new company a few months ago when there was crazy PPE shortage, and there still is a crazy PPE shortage. People are selling like $10 masks and stuff like that. A bunch of friends and I, we've known each other for a while, banded together, like, well, we'll just help our friends who are doctors, and then ended up shipping a lot of PPE. So we've shipped like millions of masks.
Could you tell us what PPE is for our audience?
Sorry, yeah. Such parlance for me. It's like, like BTC is Bitcoin. PPE is personal protective equipment. So, like, probably seen a lot of these. N95s. It's got some of these.
Well, yours is the house to go if we need any of this stuff going on.
Right. There actually is a little bit of a tie over with the crypto community. Not surprisingly, with volatile commodity markets, right? There's been a disproportionate number of crypto people that I've run into in PPE. And also because in PPE, there's like a strain of sort of people are getting into it early, are like a little bit sort of doomsday oriented, maybe. So there's also a little bit of crossover with some of the crypto kind of influences, if you will.
So probably one of the main reasons why this opportunity popped up for you is the sort of tension between the United States and China, which is something we want to kind of zoom in on a little bit with regard to both foreign policy, trade, supply chains. So give us a little bit of an update on that and where you think Xi Jinping and Beijing kind of sit right now. Are they in a stronger position than before the coronavirus, or do you feel like they're in a weaker position?
To me, I think it's pretty clear they're in a stronger position, right? Number one, they've really, they have done a good job of controlling the spread in China, right? Debate what you will about how accurate the numbers were in Wuhan, but the fact is society is open, people are in bars, people are traveling throughout China, and life is largely open, right? And so, when the government is, taking full advantage of that narrative and saying, look at option A and look at what's happening in the United States, right? 150,000 deaths and counting, really no stop with that. Contact tracing, basically, people have basically given up. Tests still take, 5 days, 10 days to come back. What's the point of that, right? So, so I think there's a pretty strong narrative around sort of the efficacy of, government A versus government B. And right now, unfortunately, the facts, like for a lot of people, are in line with that narrative, So I think that's one. And then, of course, with all of the distraction, then, it's no secret that China's been taking that to sort of flex its muscle militarily, right? And extend its influence in the region. And with PPE, it's actually been an element of diplomacy, right? So a couple of examples. Some of these masks, the N95 masks, They're certified by the CDC. So there's like a very small corner of the supply base, which is essentially a US certified mask. And it's like, maybe like a couple percent of the entire supply base. And a lot of them are made in China. So in April and May, when the FDA made some moves that damaged a number of Chinese suppliers, the Chinese basically softly sort of slowed or disallowed exports of the US N95 mask to the US. And there was also, one company in particular, Taiwanese company had donated 1 million masks to Jared Kushner, and suddenly their factories are in China, and suddenly their export license just wasn't coming through and wasn't going to come through for a few weeks. And then, meanwhile, when I talked to some folks in Africa in particular, and then also the Central Asian countries, all sort of strategic, current and future trading partners, they were getting a whole lot of donations from the Chinese government, right? And there are a number of factories that are even earmarked as kind of like the donation factories for PPE diplomacy.
So we see maybe a stronger domestic position for the party, but internationally there is a bit of obviously a pushback against the what some would call an overreach in Hong Kong. So how do you put context to that?
Yeah, they've obviously been looking to do that for a while. There actually is some domestic support. I would say like mainland support for the extended reach into Hong Kong politics, right? And a lot of the narrative is kind of like, well, your kind of economy is so dramatically underwritten by mainland China, and it's really just sort of these young, don't really know their way in the world, young protesters who are just kind of like the riffraff and causing a lot of the trouble, right? Is the narrative that a number of people in the mainland kind of have.
Right.
Furthermore, I think that, if you look at the upcoming Ant Financial IPO, remember in Alibaba IPO'd in the US, a number of years ago, and it was pretty clear at the time they had to kind of come to Western capital markets. Now Ant Financial is even bigger, right? And they're just going to IPO in Hong Kong. And so, I think China's just feeling fairly confident that they have enough, economic, political, financial strength to really underwrite Hong Kong and say, you don't need to be relying on the West, right? So it's okay.
And what's the Bitcoin situation in China currently? Are people using it to get around some of these restrictive controls and so on?
If they are, no one talks about it. I'm sure that people are to an extent, but everyone's always very careful about it. And if there are OTC actors in the space and that's used in there's standard operating procedures around how that is done and how it's not done and how it's communicated, right? And then at the same time, when it comes to blockchain, there's this kind of continued slow embrace of blockchain related technologies, I guess you could say, right? There was that big paper by the Beijing government. I don't know how serious it is because, governments put out big papers all the time, right? But the intent is at least kind of there to use certain aspects of this to, first of all, there is the central bank digital currency effort.
Right.
And there's kind of the announcement that they're going to do some pilots of distribution within Alipay and then also WeChat Pay, which is kind of a big deal, right?
This is the DCEP project for our listeners.
So it's kind of a big deal because, say what you will about the degree of centralization around a central bank digital currency, which it's of course not, right? But then by the same token, you've got billions of people who are using it like that, right? And it's kind of like if the U.S. were to put a treasury U.S. dollar central bank digital currency and push it out over Facebook, that's essentially the equivalent of what's happening here. And so it's not necessarily Bitcoin, but it is very, very widespread adoption of something which is essentially based on a blockchain, right? Now, by the same token, I think that what the government kind of likes about something like blockchain is that they can use that to kind of decentralize parts of control or liability that they're not excited about having, right? and then centralized parts to control, which are beneficial. So you can basically decentralize bad things and centralize the good things.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see this play out, where you have a CBDC project that gives the government unprecedented control and surveillance and knowledge over daily transactions and movements and behaviors, while at the same time people know about Bitcoin. Like, it seems to be, even if not everybody's using it, like, it seems that to be something that people in China are aware of. And it's, for now, it's very accessible, obviously, if you look at Huobi or any of these big exchanges. So it'll be an interesting back and forth over the coming years, for sure.
Yeah. So, you know, I think with all the stuff that's been happening recently, and it's created a lot of like the positive rationale, because there are positive aspects of having cameras in every corner, right? And having sort of fine-grained controls over who gets stimulus and who doesn't. And being able to sort of, you know, direct deposit into someone's, you know, like mobile phone accounts a little bit more PPP, right? So I think there's been a lot of political capital around these kind of ever more fine-grained and expansive kind of elements of, you know, like the marionette lines. And so I think it's going to be a while before you know, the flip side of that, which is how dystopian a world like that can get, really comes out.
Yeah. And real quick, what are some things that you're working on in the Bitcoin space? I know you're kind of busy with the PPE stuff, but anything in Bitcoin that you're working on these days?
Yeah. Well, you know, I've been continue to be an angel investor, although to be honest, I've just been 24/7, literally every day since the end of March doing this. And, you know, it's been kind of nice to be in a totally mundane world of business again, right? Like just creating like physical things, right? And trying to get them on ships and trying to get them, you know, on a truck and, you know, clear customs and all those sorts of things. But, you know, I've been thinking it's been quite a reminder about how painful these international transactions are. Literally, if I just want to like put down a deposit, talk about it on Sunday, I send a wire on Monday, it clears Tuesday China time, and then they have to go clear it out of the bank. Literally, my order can't go in for 4 days. So, you know, we talk a lot about a lot of the, you know, the benefits and things like that, but if I could even just like, can I even just send you like USD Tether or something like that? Just get it done.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lily, for joining us. It sounds like you got a lot going for you, and you know, we're absolutely grateful that you are able to import a lot more PPEs into the United States. So thank you, and we'll
All right.
Thank you, Lily.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, our next guest is Alex Lloyd. Alex, can you tell us a little bit more about Alex Lloyd?
Yeah. Hey, Alex. Alex has a longtime background in investing in technology. He was involved at some of the bigger tech companies as they were being founded. He's been pioneering a lot of venture capitalism over the last decade. He's been helping the Human Rights Foundation, especially with our work on North Korea. So it was really a pleasure to get to collaborate with him on this project.
All right, Alex, can you unmute, please? Yeah. All right, so he's unmuting, and while he's unmuting, we will.
Oh, you can't
so
read my
how's
lips?
it going, Alex?
There we go. What's up, man?
Yeah.
It's patiently waiting on mute. Thanks for the intro. It's going well, actually. I mean, considering all that's going on, you know, I try and look at the positives on all the things that's going on here and across the world. So.
And where are you?
I'm in San Francisco, and I think in terms of COVID, I think things are pretty. I'm pretty optimistic here in terms of, you know, some type of recovery. And you know, there are upsides to what's happening. I think if you look at a lot of the tech companies are adopting this kind of work from home, you know, new strategy for how they run their companies, and that's filtering all the way down to the startup community. And I think it ends up, you know, there's good and bad. The bad might be like Silicon Valley has less of a focus as an epicenter. It'd always be a place where people come and meet. But I think it also lets the kind of entrepreneurial spirit spread throughout the world. And I think that's a very positive thing.
So you're seeing an actual difference maybe in like the way that, you know, deals are done, basically.
Yes, deals are done, but also how companies are run. I mean, Salesforce and Twitter and all these companies are letting people work from home for the rest of the year.
Till next
And
summer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for another year. So if you think about that, that kind of will, you know, affect the way that companies are run. And I think that'll help the startup community as well. There's less of an incentive to actually have to have a team locally. And then, you know, eventually the slow investors that are kind of behind the entrepreneurs will be like, well, we don't necessarily only need to invest in Silicon Valley. We can invest across the whole world. And we don't even need to do meetings in person necessarily to fund a company. Like, I think there's like a whole Zoom, and I don't know what the next gen Zoom will be, type of investing that's going on.
Seems like a bullish environment, Jimmy, for a digital borderless currency, doesn't it?
Yeah. Speaking of which, like, how has the venture capital investing game changed as a result of this lockdown?
Well, for me, and I think I'm seeing this all, I mean, I've spoken to investors who like it so much that they're like, well, maybe I'll just do only Zoom investing for the rest of my life and never meet a company ever again. I mean, that's probably like the extreme example, but you know, there are advantages to that. I mean, I think there was a lot of kind of face-to-face meetings because it was expected. And I think you'll see people move out of California or invest from across the world, as long as you can create a trust network with the person that you're, or, you know, the person you're going to kind of meet. I think that trust network can expand and people can invest in a broader area. And that's certainly what I'm looking at, is more stuff. I mean, I've really focused on Silicon Valley in the US, and, you know, I would certainly open my aperture now to invest in stuff that's not Silicon Valley or the US.
Yeah, we also wanted to ask you, in the sort of investor institutional climate, there seems to be some more bullishness on Bitcoin recently. Obviously, the price is indicating that, but also just general sentiment from people like, whether it's Paul Tudor Jones or others, are starting to finally say, hey, this is something I've got, you know, 1 to 2 to 3% of my portfolio in. What's your general take on Bitcoin right now from that point of view?
It's funny, I don't consider myself a Bitcoin expert at all, but when it comes to some of my friends who work at hedge funds, I'm an expert to them. So they call me up on this type of stuff. And I have gotten calls from a couple of different people that are looking to invest in the space. And that, you know, there's a lot of conversations about what the right type of vehicle is, whether it's a venture fund or a hedge fund or direct investing. I still think that there are, it's not as simple as, or it's not the way that they're used to investing. So they have questions about it, but I definitely see an interest from the more financial community about potentially having this as an asset class. Now, obviously there are people that are naysayers, and they'll probably continue to be, and be that until Bitcoin's, I don't know how expensive, but it's definitely something that I think is piquing the interest of people, because they can kind of see that it's not necessarily correlated to all the other asset classes. That's kind of like the golden ticket for you know, investment and diversification of portfolio. You want to find something that's uncorrelated to everything else you're investing in. And right now things are all kind of moving together.
But you'd say it's still very early days, right?
Very early days.
Yeah.
You know,
would you say that's the only impetus, is that
I think
uncorrelated to everything?
No, I think that's just, you know, that's a good way for them to kind of increase their returns. Obviously, if they're looking at Bitcoin, and I think crypto, other types of investments, I think that there are a lot of companies that can take advantage of this new Bitcoin world, and they're looking to invest in those types of things. I just think in the short term, when they've looked at the history of Bitcoin trading and the rest of their equities and debt portfolios, they can see that Bitcoin is a very different beast. And I think a lot of them are trying to wrap their heads around that now, and that's a good thing for Bitcoin.
And how much of that is due to sort of the Federal Reserve money printing, and how much of it is just trying to manage their money? Like,
you know, I don't have any data. This is kind of like a feel thing for me. So I can't really say that they're like, oh, you know, the Fed is printing another $1 trillion, like Bitcoin's going to be the future. But, you know, a lot of these guys, people that are doing these investments, it's got to be in the back of their mind. Like, I don't think nobody believes that you can print forever. I mean, I don't know if it takes 5 years or 10 years or 50 years for this to kind of come home and, you know, to roost in the US. But I think that's got to play a part in their thinking.
You said something to us about how you thought that part of the reason you were optimistic about Bitcoin long term is sort of the next billion. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the people that I'm talking to are looking at this as a financial investment. But if you think about how this is really going to become more of a broad revolution or change, it has to be kind of from the bottoms up approach, kind of unstoppable money, people that will never be able to have a bank account. You know, in the US, we're very spoiled with the ease of use of transfer of money within the country. Maybe it takes a little bit longer internationally, but there are tools that everybody here can use. And I'm sure Timi will attest to this. It's not so easy to do that in the rest of the world, especially in third world countries that are kind of building their financial system right now. And to me, that's really the where I'm most excited about Bitcoin, is getting kind of a financial tool that's unstoppable from dictatorships to the next billion people.
Just as a final question, what products or technologies in the Bitcoin space are you most excited about going forward?
I mean, I think anything that makes Bitcoin easier for the masses to adopt, and there's going to be a lot of startups that work around this. You know, in the US, we have huge mega corporations already, like Coinbase, that are doing this. I mean, they're not mega, but they're very big. But I think there'll be a lot of tools and a lot of ways for transfer of value. If you think of kind of the Zoom economy, you know, a contactless, easy way to transfer value between individuals that are outsourced across the whole world. I think the current banking system is not necessarily designed for that, and Bitcoin might be a perfect tool for that. So that's what I'm most excited about in terms of investing.
I want to add one more because Jimmy and I have been thinking a lot about North Korea, Alex, and you, of course, have helped make a lot of that work possible at the Human Rights Foundation. What do you think happens one day when, you know, it's already, obviously Bitcoin's already in North Korea, meaning the regime is like hacking and stealing it. But what that means is over time, more and more of the elite start to realize that the hell with this exists and it's unstoppable. I mean, do you feel like that's eventually going to play a major role in a very closed society like that?
I think the more exciting part is if you think about North Koreans being able to save money somehow.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's this whole black market or gray market that the government kind of tolerates to get food and supplies in. I would love to see that being transacted in Bitcoin, and people are exchanging Satoshis to buy food and stuff. And people have their USB or their SD, micro SD card with, you know, $100 worth of Bitcoin, and you know, that's their savings account. I mean, that's a very strong revolutionary power.
That's the vision, man. That's the vision.
Yeah, I hope it happens, because, you know, money, unfortunately, to have freedom of speech and revolutions, you need money, and you know, that's going to be, that's why Bitcoin is, I think, so important for human rights in the future of the world.
Awesome. All right.
Well, thank you so much, Alex, for
nice
coming,
talking to you.
And we'll keep in touch.
Hopefully, I'll see you soon in real,
yes,
not necessarily on Zoom. That would be great.
In the meet space.
That would be amazing.
Bye.
Face to face.
See you.
Bye. All right. Our next guest is Alejandro Machado. Alex, can you give us a rundown of what he does?
Yeah. So Alejandro is a Venezuelan researcher, entrepreneur, coder. We met him several years ago and got the pleasure of working with him first on the Open Money Initiative, which is a research project that Alejandro and a few others started to try to understand how Venezuelans were using money as they left the country, as they went into Brazil, Colombia, and as they, you know, were sending funds back to their family that they left behind. He's now working on a couple other projects, but really excited to have him here, and obviously it was great to have him as part of the Little Bitcoin Book clan.
All right, Alejandro, how's it going?
Hey guys, it's good to be here. How are you guys?
Great.
Good. Where are you right now, and what's the situation like where you are with respect to the lockdown and so on?
So right now I'm in Bogota, capital of Colombia, and the situation is it feels like it's getting stable. Feels, you know, but it might be just we're just so used to like being in lockdowns. It's yeah, I don't know. It's a very weird time. The cases are still high. Like there's about 8,900 cases per day, new cases. I mean, and yeah, we still haven't cleared the peak of the pandemic, but people are feeling a little bit more upbeat. The weather is being kind of nice, and you see people out, obviously with masks. Everyone's wearing masks. That people have been really I guess, conscious about that. So yeah, it's weird times.
What about in Venezuela though?
In Venezuela, things are a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, this is a country that already had a healthcare system total collapse before COVID. I mean, there are brutal stories that you can read even in English of how doctors just didn't have any equipment or medicine to deal with anyone who got sick, and you basically had to do it at home.
Yeah, and there's also the additional stigma. You know, I focus on migration nowadays, and a lot of people have been fleeing Venezuela and coming to Colombia. For example, Colombia has been the top host for Venezuelans.
Give us some numbers.
Yeah, about 1.8 million people. Venezuela has about a population of about 30 million people. About 1.8 have come to Colombia, and about 5 million in total have gone to like places around the world. And
so this is like the largest. This up with Syria is like the largest mass migration at the moment in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so what's been going on is because of the pandemic, a lot of people that used to have some kind of work here in Colombia are kind of forced to go back or
meaning Venezuelans who came to Colombia, they no longer have a job and they have to go back.
They see, so they don't have to go back. It's not like Colombia is kicking them out, but they see their economic prospects are getting dim, and they feel that they would be safer at home because at least they have a house, or they might have like shelter, and they might be with their families, so they have the perception that it might be safer to be there. But it turns out when they cross over, they are forced to staying in these, I want to say almost concentration camps, where they're stigmatized for coming from Colombia, and the local, like the government of like the Maduro administration, the de facto power in Venezuela, has been claiming that the virus is coming from Colombia. They call it the Colombian virus. We've seen this in other countries as well, because it's easier to blame the problems on the outside.
Blame an outsider.
Right? Yes, and so these people that even on social media, the military has been encouraging people to snitch and to say, hey, you know, like I saw a person crossing from Colombia illegally, and they're encouraging citizens to turn on each other, to denounce just a simple case of someone wanting to come back home because that's where they feel the safest. And it's just been terrible.
And in terms of the political structure in Venezuela, I mean, Maduro is still holding on. Do you feel like the prospects are dimming for the opposition? Have they just not been able to sort of get united, or what's your take on that? Yeah,
it's been very difficult. Maduro has liked the current crisis, the pandemic.
It helps him.
But the population is easier to control if they're in fear. And obviously there are legitimate reasons to be afraid of the pandemic, but also it makes the job of authoritarian rulers easier. Yes. So yeah, the prospects are dimming. I don't know what it is going to take for democratic institutions to bloom again in Venezuela. It's going to be a very complicated picture. Because in the end, it comes down to who has the weapons, like who has the access to force. And Maduro is not shy of using force to crack down on anything.
One interesting wrinkle is that individual Venezuelans, may very well have their financial freedom before they have their political freedom, right?
Well, we certainly hope so. Yes.
Well, speaking of which, what's the Bitcoin situation like in Latin America?
Well, so the peer-to-peer volumes have grown a lot. You can see in Useful Tulips, this is a site run by Matt Alborg, that he keeps track of the volumes in local Bitcoins, Paxful, and other exchanges, and it's a very, very good source of data. And you can see there that there's more activity. Lately in Argentina, because the inflation rates have been skyrocketing in that country specifically lately. But in general, of Latin America, the volumes have been growing. So people are trading more Bitcoin. And that doesn't necessarily mean that people want to dabble in Bitcoin themselves, but that there's infrastructure of intermediaries, traders, people who are interested in earning money off of the volatility.
More liquidity.
Yes. So they facilitate money trades and money exchange between national currencies. For example, if I want to trade from Colombian pesos to bolivars because I need to send money to my family, and the only electronic system that's operating that's available to everyone in Venezuela right now, apart from Bitcoin, is the Bolivar.
Right.
Then you need to go through, or you can now go through a network of traders, and there's more liquidity, and the prices of the price of moving money from Colombia to Venezuela using Bitcoin as an intermediary currency has become more attractive. So this is an alternative to the black market, where you had to typically go to a shady place and hand over cash in pesos, and then you would wait for a very long time and not get any confirmation of where your money was. And then on the other side, people would like take the money out, because there are no formal ways to convert money to and from Venezuela because of.
I thought it would be very interesting to just zoom in on one particular incident. I mean, we're here celebrating Bitcoin Independence Day because it's beyond the control of governments and corporations. Tell us about Wells Fargo and Zelle, and why people might be, not like forced into using Bitcoin, but at least maybe they're using it as an option now, even if it's not ideal.
Yeah. So Zelle, for those that you don't know, is an interbank money system, like money transfer system that operates in the US. So if you have a Wells Fargo account and you want to transfer money to Bank of America, or I think Chase is also in there. There are a few banks in the US, large banks, that are part of this network. And so since the traditional transfer systems is slow and expensive, like a wire transfer, I think in the US costs like $30, they invented this like kind of Venmo competitor. But it turns out it's not very much used in the US. Actually, it's more used in places like Venezuela, where there's a minority of people that have access to US bank accounts, because it used to be easier to fly to the US, to Miami, to like go shopping, for example. And then, you can open an account, because why not? Like that, you are a customer like anyone else. And there were no strict rules against, having foreigners open bank accounts.
Your dollars were safer there. They were probably not going to get stolen. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then also because of high inflation, people in the middle class in Venezuela, which was quite large a couple decades ago, could convert their bolivars to dollars, and that way they would be hedged from inflation. And so what happened recently was that Wells Fargo decided that its customers that were based in Venezuela would no longer have access to Zelle. And they took that decision arbitrarily and like opaquely, and they just shut down access. We haven't received confirmation of like how many accounts were affected, because it's very opaque, and they why would they disclose that, right?
Yeah.
But we know that thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people were affected. Yeah, you're gonna say, Jimmy?
Yeah. So I want to thank you for coming on the show and giving us an update on what's going on in Latin America. But before we go, anything that you're working on within Bitcoin that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. So right now I'm head of research for a startup called Value. What we're doing is we are using Bitcoin to back digital dollars, because what we realize is that people in Venezuela want access to the dollar. So what we do is we leverage the fact that Bitcoin is being used as an intermediary currency, and it's very easy to trade from Bitcoin to bolivars, from Bitcoin to pesos and other currencies. And we are using a system similar to what Abra used to do in 2018, where you have an amount of Bitcoin and you use financial instruments that are derivatives of Bitcoin to hedge the volatility of it. So in the end, you have a synthetic asset that resembles the US dollar in value in markets, and you can give access to people. You can give access to that asset to people, and then they can hold it, and then they can use it as a dollar, like they would use a dollar in Zelle. But the difference is that anyone can have access to this, because we are committed to financially including Venezuelans in Colombia, in Venezuela, and everywhere.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to try to get Timi back on for at least a little bit. But anyway,
See you, buddy.
It was great
Good luck with
talking
that.
to you.
Muchas gracias.
Nana.
All right. We're waiting for a Christian.
So we're going to try and get Timi on for a little bit. And if that doesn't work, Jimmy and I are just going to recap for you. So
Okay, there's Timi.
patient.
Hopefully, can you hear us, Timi? Yeah, I'm not sure if this is working, but we'll see. You're muted now.
He's
Timi,
he's connecting. He's connecting.
Okay.
Let's see. Give him a shot.
Yeah. Hi, guys.
What's
All
up,
right.
man?
We're back.
Okay, to cut to the chase, Timi. So you were saying you were impressed by the scale of Bitcoin adoption across Africa, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, there's there's a lot of activity. Most of it is really long chain of moving money in and out of Nigeria and in between countries in Africa. And in between that, there is also a lot of speculation. But essentially, the goal is generally, it's really difficult to move money to China, to the US, from the US to Nigeria. And, there's a lot of trade between Nigeria and China. And Bitcoin is, I guess, the easiest, fastest, cheapest way to do that. Yeah.
So speaking of which, can you tell us more about the service that you created?
Yeah. So primarily, the startup I run is called Bitcoins, and it's like an exchange. And for, I guess, those who are familiar with Coinbase, it's on the surface pretty similar. But what we found was that there are so many non-Bitcoin savvy people who would like to send money back home, and there was a huge opportunity because one, people in the US, pretty much everyone has Cash App. I mean, Cash App has Bitcoin. So we decided, how do we reduce the steps involved in buying Bitcoin, sending it to Bitcoin, selling it, and withdrawing Naira. So we just have SendCash, and we tie Bitcoin addresses to bank accounts in Nigeria. So if you send Bitcoin to an address that's tied to my bank account, in 10, 15 minutes, I will get Naira in my bank account. Yeah.
Wow. And you launched that in May? That app? Yes. Okay. So I'll just keep describing it. Hopefully he'll come back on. But they launched this. Okay, there you are. Okay. Go ahead. Tell us.
What was the last thing you guys heard?
Just nothing. Tell us about when you launched this.
Okay,
app.
So we launched SendCash in April.
Okay.
I think, yeah. And SendCash is really just tying Bitcoin addresses to Nigerian bank accounts. So you can send Bitcoin to an address, and in 10 to 15 minutes, a Nigerian in Nigeria will get Naira, really. So you can send Bitcoin from anywhere in the world, and they'll get Naira in their account. Yeah.
So just as a final thought, Timi, tell us about the volume you guys are doing compared to last year. Just give us a sense of the growth,
Okay. Yeah. So on Bitcoins, which is the exchange I run, throughout last year, we did about $28 million in volume. And in the past 3 months, we've been doing roughly 20 million each month.
That's incredible.
And that's the demand is more every day. Things are breaking because so many people want in on this. So I think that by the end of the year, we should be able to get our first 100 billion month. That's my goal anyway. Yeah.
And you really feel like people are the majority of this volume, is it for savings? Is it for gambling on altcoins, or is it for moving money, like you said, around? How would you say the breakdown is in terms of what people are doing with this Bitcoin?
I would say 50-50 between moving money in and out of the country and speculation. So it's kind of like intertwined, where you receive Bitcoin and you're meant to like send it somewhere else, but you can also try and make some money on the fluctuations in the meantime. So at the end of the day, wherever the money ends up is still someone needing it outside or in Nigeria. Yeah.
Awesome.
And one last thing about inflation. I know that the Naira has not done well against the dollar. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on with that?
Yes. So the Naira at the beginning of like the whole COVID, it was around 360 Naira to a dollar. And now it's like 480, 470 Naira to a dollar.
Wow.
Yeah. And, if that exchange rate was accessible to everyone, it would be less, annoying and frustrating, but you actually can't sell dollars for that amount in Nigeria. There's like a fixed, the government has fixed the rate, which really makes things like SendCash really interesting. And, the incentive is there for people because
so
you get
you're basically you're part of like a black market rate. People can do the real rate.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Timi, for joining us again. Sorry about the technical difficulties from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, really great to
sounds
have
like you're
you.
working on that, on Cash and all that. Good luck to you. Thank you for joining us.
It's awesome. Yeah, Jimmy,
Thanks, guys.
See you. Take care, man. It's amazing to hear that Bitcoin on Bitcoin Independence Day is helping break the chains of malfeasance and ineptitude and repression. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it does seem amazing. But at the same time, we're still all kind of in lockdown, right? We're all kind of a little bit under house arrest. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. How do you think this whole thing ends? Like what's going to happen?
It's July. It's August. Okay. And we just talked to people, and you're going to hear from later, but like you're going to hear from people in Prague, Eastern Europe, Manila, the Philippines, Bogota, Colombia, San Francisco, California, and of course, Lagos, Nigeria, and all of them are in some sort of lockdown. So this is truly a global government reaction to this virus. And we can debate about how effective that is or necessary, et cetera. But the fact is it's happening, and it's causing serious transformations in our society. We heard a little bit about how it's impacting business, how it's impacting medicine. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's really coinciding rather neatly with people's ongoing learning about Bitcoin. And again, this is a powerful tool for this kind of day and age where, you may not need to go actually meet somebody in person anymore. I mean, this is kind of like the sci-fi, evolution of society. It's really, really crazy to be alive right now, man. It's
such a weird time to be alive.
Weird.
I do want to remind our viewers that we do have the little Bitcoin book. It's been a year since we wrote it, and it's a good book to give to all your normie friends that are asking about Bitcoin, right? And it has all of the questions that you might have, or not all of them, but a significant amount of them in the back. Yeah. And it's available in English, in Spanish, and in Portuguese. So this may be a good way to sort of end it. Any last thoughts on what Bitcoin Independence Day means to you, Alex?
Well, just again, to reiterate, it's a celebration of the fact that this independent financial network is beyond the control of governments and corporations. And regardless of what they do with our money, regardless of what happens with CBDCs or with DCEP or with the Fed, we'll always have this other option. And I just feel very grateful to live in that world. So cheers, man.
Yeah, for me, it means that we are away from the influence of corporations and governments that want to control Bitcoin. And this is, 3 years ago, we proved that with the user-activated soft fork with miners in China and in other places that wanted to control the whole thing. So I am very grateful that we are in the place that we are, and it would be a much darker world if Bitcoin didn't exist and we were in.
Agreed. All right, folks.
Thank you, guys.
See you next time.